If you're planning a trip to Porto, or even wondering about the possibility, this video will go behind the scenes on our 4 days in this beautiful city. Looking at what to know before visiting the most popular attractions, some great food recommendations, Porto versus Lisbon, time and money saving tips, and all of these topics that I've organised into YouTube chapters. I've also put the most useful information into a single PDF guide, which you can download and use for your reference when visiting. So let's get right into it. April to September are generally considered the best months to visit Porto. July and August are the best for least rain, with temperatures typically in the mid to late 20s, but this will obviously peak the prices and crowds. Because of this, April and September are great shoulder months. During winter, despite more rain, it still averages a warm 14 degrees. We were actually in Porto right when the Mediterranean was boiling in the 40-degree range this past summer, but we never felt any of that. A local did mention that Portugal's west coast benefits from the cooling Atlantic breeze. So even when travelling 80 minutes east, the temperature became noticeably hotter the closer we got to Spain. For those not following the news, the Mediterranean has now had 2 back-to-back summers where, in terms of heat, parts of it have been pretty tough, at least for a few weeks. So if this is a concern of yours, I think this puts places like Porto as a safer bet to be booking for July and August. But without wanting to be the next Michael Fish, obviously take that with a pinch of salt.
Earlier on today, apparently a woman rang the BBC and said she heard that there was a hurricane on the way. Well, if you're watching, don't worry, there isn't.
So let's get to the fun stuff, the main attractions you'll be visiting in Porto. To see the full itinerary of what to get up to, do check out our previous Porto travel vlog, but for this video, I'll be focusing on a bunch of tips and thoughts on helping you make the most from your time here. If you're anything like us, we always enjoy seeing a new city from up high, and the Clairgouche Tower and Cathedral are great for this. The Clairgouche because it is one of the landmarks in the city, and they have an okay exhibition on the way up to the top. It is quite narrow once you're up there outside, but you can't argue with the views. When looking at availability, it was usually booked up about 2 hours ahead, so we just bought our tickets in advance. Remember, we visited during peak late July, so this might not always be the case at other times of the year. I did have one comment on my previous Porto video saying that they experienced some fully booked attractions in late August, so do keep that in mind. The cathedral is what it sets out to be, a cathedral. One that is cheaper than the tower and also offers beautiful views, but with much more space on top and a larger space inside. So I would say that if you're short on time or watching your spend, this is the one high up tower to go for, but I'd advise both if you can. It is worth noting that there is a cable car in Vila Nova de Gaia. Now, unless you're really into cable cars or your legs need a rest, I definitely wouldn't recommend this. For one, you're only skipping a 12-minute walk for your €7 per person, but second, the walk from the top to bottom actually took us through plenty of nice sights and views in themselves. And even on the way back up, after visiting World of Wine, we came across this cool staircase where the art blended into the real-world background. Then, at the top of these stairs, we found our favourite lookout, just one level below the more popular one. Also a potential quieter spot for sunset if you're happy to stand, as opposed to the busier Jardim de Moro. Either way, in either location, it's lovely to be here for at least one sunset. If you have the time, the wine tasting trip to the Douro Valley is definitely worth it. Again, there are loads of variations on this trip, and they're all pretty much the same, and all with generally good reviews, so I don't think you can go massively wrong here, even with a cheaper or more expensive version. The one we did had 2 different wine tastings at different locations, along with all the transport, hotel pickup, tour guide, boat cruise and lunch. The all-in price was €130 per person, but other tours start at €99 without the hotel pickup. The lunch was in a rather packed room full of tourists, but did have a home-cooked, authentic flair to it. For me, it was just okay, but for Chiaki, this was actually one of her favourite meals, so what do I know? Also, don't be fooled by my romantic editing of the Douro River Cruise. Unless you're going on a really fancy exclusive day trip, all the separate tour groups are put together on one single boat at the same time, so it is a little packed. But overall, this day was definitely a top 3 highlight, and we found it to be a pretty good value for everything we got over 9 hours. If you don't have time or want to save a little, a great alternative for this would be just do a wine tasting tour around Gaia. I've linked a bunch of popular alternatives in that PDF guide, along with an alternative city centre river cruise which runs under Porto's 6 bridges. A few notes now for those interested in the world of wine, which we personally enjoyed so much we almost spent an entire day here. The tickets last for 3 months from the date you book for, and you don't have to visit everything in one day, you can spread them out. The prices are a little steep, but if you're sold on the idea of this place, the 3 combo ticket is the one to go for, as you pretty much get 3 tickets for the price of 2, making it a little more viable. There are 6 museums in total, and unless you have lots of time on your hands, you'll probably need to pick and choose as we did. So here are my condensed thoughts to help you make that decision. Generally speaking, I'd suggest Planet Cork, the Wine Experience and Chocolate Story to give the best variety. If you're doing a wine tasting elsewhere, maybe substitute the Wine Experience for the Porto region across the ages. This museum focuses on the history of Porto and its culture, so would provide less of an overlap. In terms of timings, for the 4 museums we visited, we spent around 60 to 90 minutes in each, but could have spent longer if we'd stopped to go through every section in full. There is a decent amount of reading in each, so I'm not sure how child-friendly it is, but maybe just drag them along anyway and explain that since you're paying for everything on this trip, they'll just have to bloody well like it. Let me know how that goes, by the way. As a ridiculous English-speaking man who typically struggles with the basic hola, I wanted to highlight a great way to really make language learning accessible and, most importantly, stick to your long-term memory. And that's with this video's sponsor, Babbel. If you're traveling or even moving to a country that speaks any of these languages, Babbel offers a full engaging solution that works. What I really appreciate with Babbel is the learning variety and presentation on offer. There are all the usual ways to learn with a language app, writing, speaking, identifying words, but then the various ways to review the next day made for a better way to push things into my long-term memory, which is usually the bit I struggle with. I'd also break up my daily courses with Babbel's built-in podcast section.
Tú eres David, ¿no?
Here you get to listen to typical conversations in your chosen language and then have that broken down and explained by the host.
You might have noticed that David and Sofia greet each other in different ways.
For an additional fee, they also have what they call live classes, where you join a real-world language class with up to 6 students and a coach, making for a more personal learning environment. Visit this special link, which you'll also find in the description below, or scan the QR code to receive up to a massive 50% off and unlock new travel experiences with Babbel. Despite me giving the Livraria Lelu a tough time in the previous video, I can still see why some people might want to visit. So if that's you, here are some good things to know beforehand. First, just be aware that it's going to be very busy, and if you have that expectation, you're halfway to enjoying it already. We booked for 9 AM, the first time slot of the day, so in theory with less people as there's only one time slot of bodies at this point. I've read that the late afternoon can be a little quieter, but I've also seen conflicting reviews online, so please let me know your experience if you've been. To get 9 AM, we had to book 2 days prior. We got there at 8:55, the line started to move relatively quickly at 9 AM, and we were in by 9:15. The innovative voucher cost €5, but you can purchase an even more innovative voucher for 16. This gives you priority access, but also includes a book from a specific collection, but they don't seem to specify what that collection actually includes. The €5 entry cost comes off the price of a book if you purchase one. Ironically, the books all seemed around €5 too expensive though. Take this blank notebook for example, priced at €18. And don't forget that €1.50 paper bag that you might want to carry the book out of the shop. When looking at a map, these are all the main areas that you'll most likely be spending your time in Porto. So in terms of the location for a hotel, around or close to this would be perfect. Our hotel was €105 per night during peak season, and we were really happy with what we got. This relatively spacious double room that, despite being central, was surprisingly quiet, especially with the super effective double or triple glazed windows. The tower, bookstore and main shopping street were all within a 10-minute walk away, as were numerous breakfast, brunch and dinner spots that I'll share next. I also always appreciate a simple hotel arrival after landing, and this was just one direct train from the airport. We only had the breakfast here once as we needed something quick for our wine tasting trip, but it was a solid buffet selection with hot and cold at €12.50 per person. In general though, it might be a good idea not having breakfast included at your Porto hotel. We found so many decent cafes here, going to a new one every morning made for a great way to start each day. Speaking of which, let's talk food. Again, I won't repeat the places we already showed in the previous Porto vlog, so watch that for the full list. So a really friendly, great tapas restaurant was Tapa Bento. These Portuguese sausage croquettes, tuna starter, glazed pork cheeks, and shrimp risotto were all to a really good standard. If you're looking for a deal, then do check out the Fork app, where you'll find up to 50% off around the city each day. Through the app, we found this relaxed Asian restaurant called Take a Break, and with a 30% discount, drinks and all of this came to €30. Next, let's do breakfast and brunch. Restaurant Real was close to our hotel and had these really good mini platters. Both these servings came with a coffee and fruit juice, with the juice itself feeling healthy without tasting healthy, and overall, this combo was probably my favourite start to the day. For Porto's most famous dish, the francesinha, these are all the places I found recommended online when researching. Miss Pavlova is a fun, bright stop for pancakes, bowls, eggs, pastries, and just generally things on toast. But it was this salmon and cream cheese sandwich that took first prize. We also really enjoyed this space. It's actually the inner courtyard for a hostel, so had a casual, trendy vibe, not at all making me feel old, but it was good for some comfort food in a sheltered yet sunny location. As a general good to know, we found Porto to be a very safe place, and thinking back, we never even saw any police the whole time we were there. And yes, maybe that's because the police are so scared of all those criminals, but even at night we felt totally fine walking around. For anyone wondering of visiting both Lisbon and Porto, or even choosing between the two, I can offer these thoughts. We loved Lisbon, so much so that we booked Porto just 7 months later, as it very much sold us on Portugal as a destination. The cities are similar, but obviously still have their own merits for each, and Lisbon is probably easier for people to get to, with it being the capital. But I must say, we did prefer Porto over Lisbon, only just by a little. It felt a bit more relaxed and chilled, the Douro River was a big highlight, it felt easier to stumble across a great eatery, and I don't know, we just felt a bit more at home here. And its proximity to the Douro region was the icing on the cake. I'm very happy to be disagreed with on this point, it was just our preference, so please feel free to explain why you preferred Lisbon over Porto in the comments, or the opposite for that matter, as I'd be curious to hear people's thoughts. On the subject of transport, I'd written this entirely too detailed 5-minute script, which you can pause now if you want the full nuts and bolts of things. I'll also include this text and even more transport information on that PDF guide I mentioned. But since the city is relatively small, you might not even need this, and I didn't want this video to be 25% about one topic. The transport system itself is really efficient and clean, and ran as expected. I just found the purchasing of the right ticket to be a little confusing to fully understand, hence the wordy explanation. But the main headline is, if you want to be able to zip around Porto and especially avoid those hilly steps, the simplest option is an Andante tour card. This is for tourists only and available as a 24 or 72-hour ticket. It's only available at Andante stores though, not the ticket machines, and you can find them at the tourist info booth at the airport or major train stations. We actually purchased the Porto card beforehand, which includes the Andante tour card as part of it. The Porto card also has discounts to numerous attractions and free access to 7 museums. Those discounts do massively vary though, from 50% off to just €1, so it's not really clear what saving, if any, you might be making. Because of this, I wouldn't overly recommend the Porto card unless you're going to be visiting those discounted or free attractions. But if you do, you can purchase them beforehand and collect them from that same tourist info booth at the airport. And finally, I'll leave you with images for what has been described as the world's most beautiful McDonald's, and I'm sure this music will make it even more appealing. As mentioned, I'll put most things discussed in that free PDF guide, and do let me know your thoughts about Porto in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and until the next one, thanks for watching, Suitcase Monkey.
I was tempted.